Hey, Nob here. In this video, I'll be showing the current top meta build for the raid boss Blood. Now, keep in mind that the raid builds are continually being adjusted as relics and new heroes get added. But if you're new to raids, check out my other raid guides that I have on my channel. The links are all in the description below. So first things first, this is intended for advanced and top-end players, so awakened heroes are definitely a must-have. If you're a beginner, please feel free to ask the official Discord, or better yet, join my open community Discord server. The link is down in the description. There are plenty of veterans around in my server that are more than happy to help, and also I'm in there too, so yeah. Or you can just stick around for future videos on my channel. Also know that I'll be showing you the standard build and positions, which will definitely differ depending on your composition and what you end up with, so it'll be up to you entirely to tweak your positioning and build to suit your needs. That's why practice mode exists, right? Lastly, knowing the build is only about 20% of the work. The rest comes from knowledge in raid forming, positioning, pathing, all of which are really important that I won't be going over in this video. That's something that you should ask your personal alliance about, and they can teach you about that. All right, so let's quickly talk about what Blood Boss actually does. I'll be talking about the boss as if the boss has all the divine properties activated, but before we get into it, the boss's gimmick is that he produces a lot of mighty blocks. Now, if you don't know what mighty blocks are, it's a shield that will fully negate one instance of damage, and this shield can stack. So before you deal actual damage to the boss, you actually need to remove these mighty blocks as fast as you can. That would be something that you need to keep in mind when you're facing Blood Boss. So yeah, so for the Blood Boss's skill, he'll be shooting a wave of blood, hitting all of your units, and then he'll gain, you guessed it, mighty blocks. For his silver property, it just means that you shouldn't use magic damage, which doesn't matter anyways because it's always been meta to use Zhao Yun or Hanzi. For his gold and diamond properties, it just means that he'll be getting a ton more mighty blocks the more units you have on the field every time he does his skill. And then for his platinum property, it just means that his skill will activate more often, which in turn means faster mighty block generation, right? So yeah. Lastly, it's important to know that the boss has a unique auto attack similar to how Mage Boss has laser beams for autos. For Blood Boss, he'll actually do this swipe move to one target that has a 3x3 hitbox. So you definitely want to keep away your key units away from this hitbox, but that's why we use Alberon to heal through it. But yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the build. Know that there are such things like hybrid builds and things like that. Since many raid builds share the same units, they can hit multiple bosses with the same team, right? But in this video, I'll be talking about it as if you're building strictly for blood. I'll be breaking down the build like so. As usual, carry, supports, booster, conditional, and optional. I mentioned this boss's gimmick is mighty blocks, right? So to get rid of this, we need to use a hero that has like a fast multi-hitting attack. For the current meta, and it's been meta for a while, Zhao Yun is used with Awakening 1. He attacks extremely fast. He can get rid of the mighty blocks very quickly. Alternatively, you can actually use an economy version. Hanzi is actually used for this. She can get rid of the mighty blocks pretty quickly with Glove Relic and Rapid. The Hanzi build can get around 2 to 3 million damage as a standard. I actually showed this build in my raid beginner guide, so check that one out if you're interested. So yeah, Zhao Yun, Awakening 1, we usually keep it at tier 5 because that's enough. If you get higher, great. For supports, we'll be using Bard, Awakening 1, Amplify, of course, and we leave her at tier 3. With Bard Awakening, she can be kept at only tier 3 while covering most, if not all, Lunaires. The next support that we'll be using is Lunaire, of course. You'll be filling the rest of your glove with this and adding as many high-tier Lunes as possible. Even with the Lunaire nerfs, yes, it's still best to stack Lunaires. The next support that we'll be using is Alberon with Awakening 1 if you have it, and we'll be leaving Alberon at tier 4 as usual. It's enough to heal through the boss's skill damage and auto attacks. The key point of Alberon here is to keep Bard alive. Lunaire and Zhao Yun actually have no problem surviving the fight, but if your Bard dies, your DPS actually suffers quite a bit, so yeah, that's why we use Alberon. For damage booster, I usually use Mercil with Awakening 1, and of course we leave the damage booster at tier 1. If you don't know who the damage boosters are, it's Rawhawk with 10% boost, and you don't need Awakening. Mara and Rosette, you need Awakenings and they'll give 15%. And Mercil, you don't need Awakening and she gives 15%. Mara's actually not a bad choice here as a damage booster since she has a multi-hitting auto attack. She'll also have a chance to dodge out of the boss's skill if the timing is right. If I use Mara though, I actually put all of my armor on her instead of Bard. It's because when Mara goes in, she'll actually grab some aggro, so yeah, it's to keep her alive. For optional, you can actually use Kayn if you want to for farming more items. Now for the altars, it's standard to run 15 hero. For the other 10 points, as usual, I personally always go for 10 greed. However, I know some people just simply prefer blacksmith, so I suggest you just try them out, right? For relics, we'll be running the standard glove relic. If you don't know what that does, check out my video. I'll leave a link down in the description below. For the other one, the current meta, as you may know, is to use Holy Cross from Arena. The last meta was actually Mask Relic, but that isn't good anymore due to the Lunaire nerfs. For relic stats, the more spout power is actually better for Xiao Yun builds, and you want to give it to Lunaire. Attack speed on Xiao Yun is actually kind of meh. For items, staffs on highest Lunaire actually is more important than bows on Xiao, but it's still good to go after a +1 attack count affix for crazy damage. But just know that staffs are the ones you want. For sword items, I usually put them on either. I usually put them on Xiao first if I have space. For armor, it goes on Bard as standard, but if you use something like Mara, for example, I usually put my armor on Mara to keep her alive. For extra bows or bows that don't have the +1 attack count affix, you actually want to give them to Bard because it'll help with the sync with Lunaires. For the bow +1 range affix for Blood Boss is actually pretty good, so it isn't bad if you roll it. Though it's important to know that Xiao is considered a ranged unit, so if you combine bows on them, you'll still be getting the +1 range. So if you don't want the +1 range, instead combine them on a melee unit. Just be sure that you put a melee unit as your 6th unit just for combining, like a Shelda or a Kayn. But yeah, this build with max level heroes will get you around 5 to 8 million damage standard pretty easily. With +1 attack count, you can actually get around 8 to 20 million damage plus, depending on how high you rolled on your Lunaire tiers. Blood Boss damage has got to be the most variable in damage just due to how the Mighty Block generation works, and with Xiao Yun attack speed and the slightest positions can make a difference. But yeah, that's why you see so much variance in Blood Boss damage. But yeah, so to show you the build, I actually be using my blacksmith build to demonstrate. The only difference between the two builds is the extra Xiao you need for repositioning. So pro tip, you can actually create one Xiao team that can hit multiple bosses, and this is because the bosses uses the same team basically, but there's a little variance in it, right? So yeah, so let's go into a practice and show you how this works. All right, so for Blood Boss, as I mentioned, the positioning is actually pretty variable depending on what you end up with in your raid reform. So the best thing I can tell you is to keep on practicing positioning and finding the best one that works out for your team. But for me, I usually line up my Lunaires like this. And then for this team in particular, I use it to hit Blacksmith because I have a tier 1 Xiao. I actually want this to die. So actually he goes forward and then he'll die. And that means that Blood Boss will actually get less Mighty Blocks. And that's the key here. And the other key point is to have Alberon healing Bard, and that's pretty much it. And the Xiao will just remove the blocks, and yeah. And there it is, the current Blood Boss meta build that all the top alliances use. Be sure to check out my other raid meta builds that I have on my channel. I'll leave a link down in the description below if you haven't checked it out already. And as a reminder, I have my open community alliance server that you can come and join and hang out. You can find guides, and there are a lot of veterans around to help you out and just ask questions and come and chill and hang out, right? So thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.